So welcome to those of you who don't know me. I'm Claire Harkin. I am the Technical and Training Officer for the Ancient Tree Forum. So the purpose of this next hour really is to provide you with information about the VETCert exam process. So I'm going to do about 20-25 minutes of kind of talking through a couple of slides, signposting you to resources, and then there will be time at the end for questions. It is going to be focusing on the exam process, so we're not here to talk about tree management per se, so not technical questions about veteran tree management or issues relating to them, but really focused on preparing for the exam. So I hope that's what everyone thinks they're here to do. So in terms of, can I share my screen for you? Yes. Okay. So in terms of what VETCert is, it's a project really which ran across Europe between 2016 and 2019. So it built on the earlier VETTree project, which some of you might have been aware of, which was kind of the one-day training course. And it was made up of 10 partners across 7 countries initially, although many more countries are trying to join in with the process, and there's the process for getting people involved in that. The training course and the exam structure was kind of formalised in 2019. There was one range of pilot exams that was delivered, and then of course we were hit with COVID, so everything ground to a bit of a halt. And we restarted it again just over 3 years ago with some funding as well that we managed to get from DEFRA and the NLHF, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which has been able to support us delivering it in the past 3 years. In the UK, it is a partnership really, which is run between the Ancient Tree Forum, and we deliver the training, and the ARB Association, and it's the ARB Association which administers the exams. And the point really of doing it was twofold. It was to be able to give validation and quality control to people who are working with veteran trees, to be able to give them kind of the certification and the standing to be able to show that they had done the work and had the knowledge to be able to give the specialist care which is required for some of our special trees. And also it's to help people who are looking for suitable consultants or practicing level specialists to work with trees for which they have responsibility. So our aim has really been to build up a network across the country, which is what we've been focusing on over the last 3 years. Our TCAF funding is now coming to an end, but we have built up a really good head of steam over this past 3 years while we've had that funding. So the programme is going to be continued past then.
On the link.
Okay, so if we think about prerequisites, anybody who wants to do the exam, you need to get in touch with the ARB Association.
You don't need an ID.
Register your interest.
Have you got?
John, I think your microphone's on.
Zoom.
Okay. To register your interest, and then there is a process of screening that the ARB Association will undertake, and prerequisites that you need to meet to be able to be submitted for the exam. So for practicing level, that is an ARB qualification, which is at least at level 3 or equivalent to the European Tree Worker. You need to have your various climbing, chainsaw, platform certificates, and a minimum of 5 years relevant experience. If you don't have the formal ARB qualifications, there is what's known as a Route 2 in, where you would need to be able to prove that you have knowledge at least that equivalent level. So that's for practicing. For consulting, it is an ARB qualification at level 6, so that's equivalent to a degree level, or the European Tree Technician level. Again, 5 years relevant experience with veteran trees, but 3 of those in this instance are in consulting. Or alternatively, because the consulting qualification isn't necessarily restricted to people in the ARB sector. It could be ecologists, it could be land managers, those sorts of things. Again, it's about having an alternative route in. So if the applicant can prove they have knowledge equivalent to that level 6 qualification, and then in that instance, if they have 10 years relevant experience in the sector. So those are the prerequisites. There is some flexibility in that, and the ARB Association are open for conversations to talk about other routes in. So if you feel that you did have the appropriate levels of knowledge and experience to do well in the exam, but you don't tick exactly those official boxes, they are open to having that conversation. But really, it's about making sure that you're not wasting, time and money by taking the exam when you're not ready for it. So just making sure that the right people are getting in front of the examiners at the right time. So in terms of the structure of the exams, they are long days, quite challenging days. For the practicing level, they say it's 5 hours, but that's 5 hours of actual examination activity, and you'll be moving between different sections of the exam. So in reality, it will be a full day. There is an indoor written paper, which is worth 29% of your mark for the whole exam. And that's made up of multiple choice questions and then some longer form written questions. And then you have an outdoor session, which makes up the rest of the exam mark. A quarter of that outdoor session is an oral exam. So you will be out there with a couple of examiners, and they will be asking you questions which are kind of more broad in their theory, but can be picked up by looking at the setting in which you are. And then the rest of that outdoor session is exercises. And that's where you'll be asked to look at specific trees. And you'll be asked to, for example, describe how you would carry out a prescription that had been given to you for that particular tree. You will talk through practical knowledge, so things like where you would be making cuts if that was appropriate for your particular tree, what type of cuts, what machinery you might use, what you might use for access points, and so on. But you won't be asked to actually demonstrate doing those. So these are, particularly special trees that, we don't want people just coming in and using as practice for an exam. So it will be discussions of what you would do rather than being asked to actually do that. For the consulting level, again, the official timing for that is 7 hours, but you will probably be there for a bit longer, again, moving between the different elements of the exam. And these elements can happen in any order. So there will be groups of examinees who will be doing each part of the exam at the same time within the day, and then those groups will be moved around to the different sections. So there may be some hanging around between each section. You need to be kind of prepared for a long day. So in terms of what's included, there is an indoor written element, again, 2 hours in this instance, and that makes up 34% of your mark. In contrast to the practicing level, there aren't any multiple choice questions in this section. It's just the longer form answers. There will then be an outdoor oral exam, again, 2 hours for that, and that makes up 21% of the exam mark. And then the tree management exercise. So that is where you will be given 2 trees. You'll be given survey time to look at each of those trees, and then you'll be going back into the exam room and you will have a total of 2 hours to write up a management report for each of those trees. And you will be given a template for that management report, and I'll share with you what that template looks like a bit later on. The written questions, the standard written questions for both practicing and consulting is generally done with pen and paper, unless you have any access needs which would require you to use, for example, a laptop to do that. And if that is the case, then you do need to get in touch with the ARB Association as soon as possible so they can make those accommodations for you. The management exercise itself will be done on a laptop, and you'll be given the template on the day. So you do need to make sure that you bring a laptop with you and with a USB port that they can give you that template. You can also bring equipment to survey the tree. You can bring a camera, and actually I would highly recommend that you do bring a camera and take photographs of the trees that you're looking at, and you can then put those in your report and make reference to those probably a lot quicker than you could write out what you're describing. What you're not allowed to bring with you is any reference materials to refer to during the session. Okay, in terms of the exams, how feedback that we've had from the examiners, the overall pass rates were very low to begin with, but we have seen a steady improvement over the course of this programme, and they are now quite healthy, around the sort of 50, 60 to 70% for consulting. Practicing was much lower in comparison, but actually in the last round of exams, practicing level pass rate there was 75%. So it varies from exam session to exam session, but we are seeing reasonably good levels of passing now in both types of exam. But they are not afraid to fail people, and it is appropriate, really. I think that, you know, the right people get this qualification. But things are looking good, and certainly on par now with our other European countries who are delivering VETCert exams. Where that kind of, we can look at that in a bit more granular case. The written exam is generally a very good standard across both exams. So what that shows us is that people are generally quite well prepared in terms of the theory. But where we're seeing lower pass rates, that's for the practical exercises and the oral questioning on site, and for the management exercise for the consulting level. So that indicates that whilst people can understand the theory, it's somewhat more difficult to apply that theory in practice, and people do need to make sure that they have sufficient experience in working with veteran trees and being able to apply these different concepts to veteran trees in the field, and really being comfortable that you know what you're doing with that. So for the consulting exam, for example, where you've got those management plans to do, very, very strenuously recommend that you go out and practice doing that in the field on a number of occasions before you actually get to an exam. Okay, let's have a look at this now. So the way that the exams are structured is that they are built around what's known as the VETCert standards. So these are available on the VETCert website. So this is vetcert.eu. And there's a tab on here called standards. And then we have standards for the practicing level and standards for the consulting level. So the standards are broken down into 12 units, and both practicing and consulting have the same units, the same topic headings, but the content within each of those topics will be different between practicing and consulting level. And then each unit will be examined to this set of standards. So I've just lost that screen here. So if we have a look at the consulting level, and the document for practicing looks the same, just the detail within it might be slightly different. This is the key resource that you should be referring to when you are preparing for your exam, and really being quite diligent in asking yourself, is your knowledge up to scratch? Do you have experience to be able to display that your knowledge is up to scratch with each of these different units within the standard? And if there are any units which you identify as being less strong for you, really being able to focus some revision and further study on those to come up to speed before you go for the exam. Each of the units will be examined in some form throughout the day that you're there. So this is unit number 1. So here in the consulting level, Unit number 1, the title is Veteran Trees, Their Recognition and Values. It will give you a brief summary at the start of each unit. So in this, you are expected to have a knowledge of a variety of veteran trees, their history and values. And then it will break it down into areas of skill and knowledge which you need to be able to demonstrate. So in this instance, recognise the veteran tree in various forms and contexts. And to do that, to provide a technical definition for a veteran tree, show an awareness that that might differ in different contexts, and that veteran tree form may have been influenced by their past management, environmental conditions, and so on. And then the second element of that is explaining the range of values that veteran trees provide. So that's Unit 1. Unit 2 will be laid out in a similar way, and so on throughout all of the 12 units. And similarly for the practicing level, as I say, those unit headings will be the same, but the detail within it will be different. For the consulting level, unfortunately not for the practicing level, but for the consulting level, there's an additional document which is incredibly helpful with this. So it's under, again, on the VETCert website, but under the training products tab, and it is called indicative content. And that really just goes into more detail about the standards. So again, so you can recognise the headings here from the other document, Unit 1, Veteran Trees, Their Recognition and Values, providing a technical definition for a veteran tree, and then it goes through and tells you the sort of thing that it would expect you to see in that answer. And again, that happens for all of the units within the standards. So those 2 documents, if you're consulting, the standards and the indicative content, or if you're doing the practicing level exam, just the practicing level standards, those are really critical for your preparation. Make sure that you have those down. In terms of other places that you can go for information, just go back to that screen. Again, on the training products here, there are, oh, sorry, share that. Back on the training product screen, there are a number of different videos here. So those of you that have been on a VETCert training course will have seen some, but not all of these videos. These are all the videos that were produced for both the veterinary course and the VETCert course, so they're available for you to access. There are a page of fact sheets, which covers things like economic valuation methods, cable bracing and propping, and so on. So there are fact sheets there that you can refer to. There are some case studies. So these were done when the course and the standards were being put together, and there are examples from across Europe there of different trees which were considered when they were putting together the standards. So that's a good resource for you to refer to there. And there's also particularly helpful probably for practicing level people. They've got pruning techniques. So there's some slides here about pruning techniques and length of stubs and those sorts of things, how you would judge trees' response to cutting and so on. So a lot of resources for you on the VETCert website, on the ATF website, Ancient Tree Forum website, under resources. There are a number of other guides there. We have VETCert walking you through the standards. So those are a set of videos that Vicky Benson recorded going through the VETCert standards. So if you are a person who does not like to take your information in necessarily by reading through a lengthy document, Vicky talks through those in a set of videos instead. So if that's a better way for you to take in your information, that's quite useful. There is a charge. It's done in American dollars, but it works out to be approximately £50. So there is a charge for accessing those. So they're not essential, but if that would be a useful way for you to kind of get to grips with the content of the standards, that's available there.
Essential, don't pay with cash.
Sorry? No, it wasn't for me. David Lonsdale's book is available. Many of you, I'm sure, will already have a copy of this, but this is available as a free PDF download. And much of the material that was put together for the VETCert training draws on David's book. So good reference material there for you if you don't already have access to that. Okay. I guess a few other things to prompt you around exam technique, which doesn't just apply to this exam, so kind of standard exam recommendations, I guess, but perhaps for some of us it's been quite some time since we've done written exams, so worth thinking about. The first and real important thing to do is to read the questions carefully. Make sure you're answering exactly what it is that they've asked you. So you might see a trigger word like functional units or something like that and think, oh, I've read about functional units, or I know about functional units through my work. I'm going to write everything I know about functional units. And that would be entirely the wrong approach, because you're going to waste an awful lot of time in doing that. And much of what you write might not be answering the specific question that they're asking. So make sure you really understand what it is that they're looking for before you start answering. Things like, if they ask you for, 2 examples of something, make sure you give them 2 examples. Don't give 3 because you will be wasting your time. Don't give 1 because you will only get half of the marks available for that particular question. So make sure you do that. In a lot of cases where people fall down is when they are asked in the management template, for example, to give their recommended course of action and then to give the pros and cons of taking that course of action. People talk about the pros, they tend not to talk about the cons. And again, you will have missed half of your marks for that particular question if you do that. So really be clear on what's being asked and make sure that you focus on answering that. Try and answer all the questions. Be aware of the time that you have remaining. The exam goes very, very fast. So try not to get bogged down on a particular question and miss another bunch of them out, because you will obviously automatically lose marks for those that you haven't tried, even if your answer to that one particular question that you focused on is wonderful. It will still be limited by the amount of points which have been made available for that question. And certainly allocate your time appropriately between the different questions. You will see that after each question, it tells you how many marks that question is worth. If a question is worth 10 marks, you will be expected to write a much longer answer than for a question which is worth 2 marks. So bear that in mind in the amount of detail that you're going for, and also the amount of time that you're allocating to those questions. Absolutely fine to use bullet points. This is not an English prose exam. It just needs to be clear what you mean. So it doesn't have to be beautiful sentences. You just have to be clear in what you're saying. And also assume that the examiner doesn't know anything. You have to make sure that you're kind of showing them your workings, how you come to your particular conclusions and your answers. So, for people who have been working amongst trees for many years, there will be just a feeling. You'll look at a tree and you'll have an understanding of its condition and so on. We can't assume that the examiner shares that understanding with you, so you need to clearly articulate what it is. So you cannot say the vitality of the tree is good. You can say the vitality of the tree is good, and I know that because leaf colour, leaf density, extension growth, so on. So you need to really spell out those things which maybe in the real world you wouldn't bother referring to in a report because you consider them to be just givens, but in this context they're not. And just make sure that what you're writing is legible. And as I say, if you've got a condition that makes writing difficult, then do let the AA know well in advance and they can accommodate that for you. I'll just share, this is some feedback which again has come from examiners about some ideas that people don't necessarily incorporate into their answers in the exam. but really thinking much more broadly than maybe we are asked to do in our day-to-day working lives. So you might, in normal circumstances, a client might just want you to look at a particular tree. In the exam, we want to think a lot broader than that. So we look at the individual tree, but we also need to understand that the tree itself is an ecosystem. It supports a huge range of other organisms, and the tree itself is part of a much wider ecosystem. So think, very broad in how you're addressing this. We need to think about the physiology of the tree, but also about its ecology, the habitat that it provides and is within, the diversity perhaps of the population or of the other populations that it can support. And then you're asked other questions which cover various things which are in the standards, but certainly thinking about the health, vitality, the biomechanics of the tree. And then again, more broadly, the historical, cultural and societal views and values which might be associated with these trees. And another area which people tend to do relatively poorly on in the exam is thinking about the landscape. So the landscape history and the management, so the context in which these trees have developed and now are surviving. And that kind of also links back to this concept of tree time, which we talk about. So how long has it taken for the tree to reach the position that it's in currently, and what might have been the different management or environmental circumstances which have influenced that. And when we're thinking about proposed management, we're not just thinking about the immediate result of those interventions, but what might the medium and longer term scenarios be as well. So all of those things are things which are not necessarily or have not necessarily been picked up very well by exam candidates previously. So those are kind of things to be thinking about when you're doing your exam. I think that might be everything. So what I will also do is share with you, for those that are interested in the management, the consulting level exam, is this management template. So as I said, you will have 2 trees for which you need to prepare these reports. You will have some time in the field. It's not tightly prescribed what that time is. I understand it is a minimum of 15 minutes per tree. But again, you might end up having longer, depending on if you're kind of hanging around waiting for other groups of exam candidates to move through and so on. But you need to, when you're in the field, you won't have this template with you in the field, but you can have a notebook and you can have, made notes in advance. You need to be thinking about gathering the information whilst you're out there, which will enable you to complete this template when you get back to the exam room. You have only effectively 1 hour per tree to complete these templates. It's 2 hours overall, but you need to do 2 trees in that time. The examiners will not prompt you to move on from tree 1 to tree 2 during the exam. So again, just be thinking about managing your time. You don't want to spend, an hour and a half on your first tree to realise that you've only got half an hour left to do the second one. So there, I can share this template with you, and the Arbor Association will also send it out to anybody who's registered for the exam. There's just some, general information there. Again, it says that you will have time to upload any photographs that you might have taken out in the field. And then you have these sections which will come up within the report, and we'll look at those in a second. But you can see they're broken down into health and vitality, structural condition, the various values associated with the tree, threats, then coming up with your management plan and justifying your management plan. You can see here that there are different marks allocated to each of these sections. So the management plan is the largest with 20 marks. A few have 20 marks, a couple only have 12 marks. So again, thinking about allocating your time, make sure that you are prioritizing those areas which are worth more. And then there's a few extra marks for clarity of the plan that you're putting forward. And then for each of the trees, we have these sections again, so health and vitality, and then it just gives you some guidance as to what they're looking for. So provide a vitality assessment, ensure you explain the factors you've taken into consideration when assessing the health and the vitality of the tree. So again, make sure you are understanding what it is that they're asking you for and answer those things. If you've identified some observation in the field and you're not exactly sure where it goes, or maybe it fits under a couple of sections, it's okay to repeat yourself. Don't waste a lot of time doing that, but if you're doing, bullet points or so on, it's fine for you to add them in a couple of places. But there will be, things which are different between the sections. Again, another thing just to make sure that you are looking closely at the questions with the values section. They talk about wildlife, historical, cultural, social, but then in the description, you only need to write about 2 of these 4 options. So again, make sure you're not writing about 4 because you'll be wasting time. You won't get any extra points for doing extra values. Also, of course, don't only do 1. But you need to pick the most relevant and explain the application to your tree. And here we go, in the management justification summary, the final section, this is what I referred to earlier. You've made your management plan. It then asks you to consider everything you've assessed and described above and provide a short summary justifying why you think your plan is the most appropriate for a tree. And that should include both positive and negative impacts for the tree. So again, make sure you cover both aspects there. You'll lose half of your marks straight away if you don't do that. And that's where you manage to make your persuasive case. So that's the management template for those doing the consulting exam. And that's everything official I had to share with you. So